My name is Andrea Blevins. I'm the superintendent here in Hamilton City Schools. First, I want to say thank you for coming out today to hear about school funding and the changes that have happened in the state and what that means for Hamilton forward. I think it's very important that the conversation doesn't just happen in this room. And so tonight, we're going to go through how schools are funded. A lot of people don't realize how our schools get the money that it receives. We're also going to talk about what changes have happened in school funding, and then what those changes have done for our district and what we have to do next. Okay. After we go through some slides, myself and the treasurer, Jeremy Frazier, we will open it up to some questions. We've got some staff members that will run microphones around. Please ask. The worst thing that could happen is you walk out of here with questions tonight. We want to make sure this is an open forum for us to talk about what that means. And then at the very end, we will have an opportunity for you to give us feedback or ideas of things to consider. I don't want anyone to feel that we are having this meeting to sound an alarm of, oh my goodness, tomorrow our district is in a financial peril. That is not where we are. But we are in a place where we have to really have a conversation about how these changes are impacting our district and what long-term planning does our district have to do to ensure that Hamilton City Schools continues to be an amazing organization and public entity for our community. I won't go too far into the weeds, but I will tell you, I believe one of my personal dreams is that public education is the American dream, is the great equalizer in society. And that is something that we are fighting for every single day in our state. And so we're going to go through some overview slides and things like that. I will put up here, there is a QR code. Sometimes it's hard to see the numbers on the screen, so if you want to take out your phone, I know we're filming this, so I'm going to already say I'm sorry to my mom, but if you are not very tech savvy, if you open up your camera, on the bottom will be a little yellow line that you click, and it will take you immediately to the slide so you can follow along. Hi, Mom. I know you don't like technology. Okay? I'll give you a minute there before we move on. We good? Okay. All right. So one of the reasons why we have done these forums, not just for our staff, but also for the community, is we are more than a district. The success of our school district is deeply connected with the success of our city and vice versa. The success of our city is dependent on what happens in our school system. And so one of the reasons these conversations are so important is because people have to understand the changes and the challenges that we're going to face here in the district. Let's talk a little bit about who we are in Hamilton. We are the 18th largest school district in the state of Ohio. We serve roughly 8,200 students in our buildings. We have 1,300 employees, close to 1,300 employees in Hamilton City Schools, and we are the largest employer in the city of Hamilton. Within our district, we have 13 different buildings. I sound a little bit like a partridge in a pear tree. 8 elementaries, 6 that have preschools, 2 middle schools, a freshman 9th grade only center, a 10 through 12 high school, which is hosting us here tonight. Thank you to Mr. Smallwood as well as the Fox family for really setting us up in such a great way today. And then we also have an alternative or credit recovery high school, which is our Miami school at the Rouse Avenue building. When you pull up our state report card, you'll see that it says 100% of our students are economically disadvantaged. That piece is because we provide free breakfast and lunch to all of our students, but it doesn't accurately affect the economic situations that our families face. 73% of our students would qualify for free or reduced lunch if we did not offer those free programs. Here are our demographics. We have 26% of our overall student population is Hispanic, 12% is Black, 8% is multiracial, 52% white, and 2% other. We do have a growing students with disabilities population. 22% of our overall student population are students with disabilities on an IEP or 504. And then 13.7 are ELL students, and those are students that identify English as their second language. That means that English is not their native speaking language in our country. You can see our buildings. I believe, look around here at how beautiful this auditorium is. Our buildings are some of the best, second to none in the area. Let's talk about our team that supports those students. As we mentioned before, we have almost 1,300. We have 1,261 employees in our district. We have 674 certified staff. So those are our teachers, those are our nurses, our school psychologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. We have a very large certified staff. Our non-certified staff, which are just as important, our classified staff, our bus drivers, our custodians, our educational assistants, secretaries and clerical staff, our buildings and operations team, we have 520. We have 57 administrators district-wide, and that ranges from 2 at the elementary to 3 at the secondary level and on up from there. Our average teacher salary is $78,312 a year. Our teachers have advanced degrees. We have highly skilled teachers in our district. 85% of our teachers have beyond just their bachelor's degree. So some type of master's or on their way with extra coursework to ensure that we have the best quality teachers in our classrooms. We also have a veteran staff. 65% of our teachers have above 10 years experience in the field of education, with many that most of their career has been here in Hamilton. Our average administrator salary is $102,000 a year. These are just some of our facts that we can share to give you an idea of the scale and size of our district. Financial information, which Jeremy's going to talk a lot about these pieces, but our total valuation in the city of Hamilton is $1.2 billion. That is the local wealth in the community that we serve. That's not within our school budget. Man, that would be nice and we wouldn't be sitting here today. However, when we look at what we actually have to spend in our district, most of the funds we're going to talk tonight are called general funds. In our district, we have roughly $124 million in our general fund. That is where most of our personnel comes from, most of our purchases of gas, fuel, supplies, different things like that. We also have additional funds that are anywhere from grants to permanent improvement that help to maintain our buildings and the quality of our schools that total our total assets of $162.5 million. Where do we get that money from? This is something that I will be completely honest. When I first started in education, I wasn't really sure how schools were funded. 75% of the dollars that Hamilton City Schools brings in come from the state. And we're going to talk a lot about the state and changes with state funding. 20% come from our local property taxes. And I throw that out there because I know there's a lot of conversation about property taxes across the state of Ohio. Hamilton City Schools actually taxes our local community at the lowest possible rate that is legally acceptable in the state of Ohio. I think it's important to share that this is a formula to get to 100%. So for instance, if a community, and we have many that surround us, that generate more in their property taxes, they get a lower contribution of state dollars. It always equals about 100% when you average those out. Jeremy will talk more about that here in a bit. Where do we spend our money? It's one thing to bring it in, but how do we actually spend and allocate that? 83% of our overall spending is spent on people over programs. I've said that since I came to this district. The best resource we can have is the people that work in our schools, that work with our students and drive our buses and keep our crosswalks safe. It is our people. So most of our budget of that $124 million that I mentioned goes to salaries and benefits. 13% are for services, things that we purchase for students, whether that's partnerships with the ESC, whether that's placements for students that needs exceed what we can meet here in the district, and then 5% for all the other miscellaneous expenses that we have here. One thing that I think is really unique is how much does Hamilton really spend per student? We spend roughly, on average, $15,000 per student, and that is an average. We have some students that actually we educate for closer to $100,000 a year. We have other students that are a little less based on the needs of what they have. But as an average, if we put all of our money and all of our students, divide that together, it's about $15,000 a student. The state of Ohio average for what we spend, what the state of Ohio on average spends at a student across all districts is $16,000 a student. Then the last number, if you look over here where it says SD, That is looking at similar districts. So the state of Ohio recognizes that each community has unique needs. And just because you're geographically located next to another district does not mean you're similar. I'll tell a fun story. I'm actually from South Florida. I'm not from Ohio. Born and raised, not from here. When I was placed for student teaching, I was placed in a large urban school district. Loved it. Absolutely fell in love, taught middle school language arts and social studies. At the end of that student teaching year, I was looking for a job and they didn't have any. And so I went to the next town over thinking, how different could it be? Oh my goodness. I went from a very urban feeling environment to a very rural environment. Our geographic location doesn't really compute with what our makeup is in our district. The state recognizes that. And so the state takes a look at all kinds of different qualifiers, your median income, are you an urban environment, are you a suburban or a rural, puts them together and groups schools into categories of 20. So Hamilton has 20 of our most similar districts. Those districts spend about $20,000 per student to educate. Why is that important? Because we are doing it more efficiently than other districts across the state. And might I add, we are also outperforming them on almost every metric that there is. We have amazing quality in our district. We do so much for each and every student. Jeremy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. My name's Jeremy Frazier. I'm the district treasurer, and I've got 4 slides to go over this evening. We're going to talk about how schools are funded. We're going to take a look at a brief history of funding in Ohio. We're going to look at what are some current trends. And then we're also going to see what does that mean for Hamilton City Schools. I know it's a little bit fuzzy, but the data on this slide here comes from the latest state report card. It includes all funds. Andrea spoke a little bit about the general fund. This includes all funds, and it also compares Hamilton City Schools to the state as a whole. Schools are primarily funded with 3 revenue sources: state, local, and federal funds. Now, typically when I'm talking, I am referring to the general fund, and Andrea touched on that. The general fund's our operating fund. It funds most folks' salaries and benefits. It pays for our utilities. It pays for bus fuel. It pays for a various number of things, school supplies. We do have other funds, and those are included in this graph here. An example would be capital improvement funds. Capital improvement funds is a separate fund that pays for, I believe we're getting a roof repair on the high school. We buy buses out of that fund. We put carpet in with that fund. And the funds in a school district are set for certain purposes. And one fund cannot pay for things that the other funds can pay for. So we're specifically talking about the general fund here, the operating fund, and we touched on where we get our revenue from. So 75% of our revenue comes from the state, 20% comes from the local taxpayers, and 5% comes from miscellaneous revenue, which is mostly interest and various reimbursements. So with being that heavily reliant on state revenue, any change at the state level drastically impacts us, whether that's good or bad. So here's a brief history, 100 years of school funding. It all started in 1911 with a shift to voter-approved levies. The state said we're no longer funding these things, and so the local taxpayers need to share some responsibility for services. If we jump to 1976, this is where we get House Bill 920, the 20 mil floor, terms like that. And basically what the state said with this legislation is that it freezes inflationary growth for property tax revenues. So what does that mean? That means that if in 1976 Hamilton City Schools passed a $2 million property tax levy, we would not get any inflationary growth on that, meaning that same levy passed in 1976 still generates $2 million a year for revenue. No inflationary growth. Obviously, things don't cost what they did in 1976, which is why local governments and school districts are constantly coming back to the voter to get additional monies. Let's jump to 1997. We've got the famous DeRolf case. This is where the Ohio Supreme Court declared school funding model that Ohio is using to be unconstitutional. If we jump to 2021, the state has finally decided to try and fix that unconstitutional model with something they called the Fair School Funding Plan. And that's something that we're operating on right now. It's a 6-year implementation, so we've been through years 1 through 4. And as Andrea spoke about, it's based on district wealth. So the wealthier a district is, the state says, well, we don't need to kick in as much money for that district because they can raise it locally. The less wealthy, the more the state has to kick in. So that's the model. And we've been through 4 years of that. And there's all kinds of different factors that make up state wealth. But what they've started to do with this new biennium budget that was just signed into law is they've started to monkey with some of those factors that are inside that formula. And it has created the desired effect from the state that the state is now kicking in even less dollars than they were before by not fully funding the model. So let's go to the next one. And if you can see, this is just a graphical representation of that last statement. There's 2 lines on this graph. One is the state share, and one is the local property tax burden. And you can see those lines are converging. And that's the desired effect that the state wants by monkeying around with the items inside the base cost formula for the Fair School Funding Plan. Ohio is currently 45th nationally in state funding for K-12 education, which I think is, it was an alarming stat the first time that I heard that. The state share is now down to just a little over 33%. And while that number has been reducing, the local property tax burden has increased. And not only has it increased, it's increased mostly with the local homeowners, the local taxpayers. We can see there now, it jumped from 46% in 1991 to almost 68% currently. Next slide. So what does that mean for Hamilton City Schools? This is a snapshot of the October forecast. And we are currently in FY26. So we started the year with a little over $48 million, and we're going to end the year with a little less than $44 million. For those of you in the back, if you can't see the red numbers, obviously red's not good. That first year is a $4.7 million deficit. That's this current fiscal year. Next year, it almost doubles. And right now, we know what we're going to be funded on based on that biennium budget that was just signed into law. That goes into effect every 2 years. And the way that works is the governor sets the stage for what he thinks the state should pay on education. And he submits that. And then the House says, we don't concur with that. We're going to create our own idea of what we should spend and how we should fund K-12 education. And they pass that. And the Senate says, well, we don't concur with that either. So we're going to create our own funding for schools. And they pass that. And then they go to conference committee. And what does that mean? That means someone from the governor's office, someone from the House, and someone from the Senate, they get together in a committee. And what we get out of that room is the budget bill. And so that's what we were stuck with this year for FY26 and 27. And we know what that is going to be. That's already signed into law. What we don't know is what happens in the next 2 years. We're going to have a new governor. He's the one that sets the stage for educational spending. So what we have done throughout the forecast is just continue trends. And if we looked at the last graph, obviously the current trend does not look good for public education. So we have a deficit problem, and that is something that we need to address before we get into the unknown of the next biennium budget.
I find myself asking this question of how did we get here? How in public education have we got here? And there's a few things that I think really point to it. As Jeremy talked about the changing of the formula and the way that the state foundation chooses to monkey with those numbers to affect what the overall dollars coming into school districts are. You know, they'll tout that more money is being put in, but what they're not telling you in those same pieces, they've changed other pieces of the formula that actually reduce the overall dollars coming in. That's one side of the coin. If you remember, Jeremy talked about we're funded 3 different pieces. The other side of that is property tax. Just yesterday, 4 new bills were passed in Columbus that will limit the ability for districts to make additional revenues off of property taxes. 4 new bills to target that. Property taxes don't just fund public schools, but in this latest round of bills, that the educational component of property taxes was targeted in that particular piece. The other elephant in the room that we have to talk about is school choice and the voucher system. School choice, parents have a right to send their kids anywhere. This is not a school choice conversation. Instead, it's about where that funding comes from. So in the state of Ohio, we have always had voucher programs of some variety over the years. Typically, the Ed Choice program started to provide students from poverty who lived in areas where school districts were determined to be failing, that parents could then choose to access money to go to a private school of their choice. However, in recent years, that language has been completely changed and expanded. The Ed Choice expansion that 2 years ago really blew up across the state. We saw a massive rocket of the number of kids taking advantage of that scholarship. No longer is based on the quality of the community school or on the financial well-being of the family that wants to access the money. And so we have seen a decline in enrollment. If you think back to Hamilton City Schools in the 2010, everyone would say Hamilton City Schools, a 10,000 student district. Who remembers the number I gave you of how many students we have? What is it? Someone tell me, come on. 8,200. Now, not all of those are voucher students. There are lots of other factors of what that looks like, but there are a lot of factors that have gotten us to this point. I listed here too the politicizing of the educational system on a national, state, and local level. The number of mandates that are entered into our schools. You know, I put this picture in the front of all the different things that fall on the plate of our educators. And more with regulations and requirements. Many of those things are under or unfunded mandates from the state of Ohio that we are required to do to receive dollars, the same dollars, that are given to these Ed Choice scholarships without the requirements. When Jeremy talked about the school funding formula and he talked about we went years 1 through 4, year 5 and 6, the reason why this was such a shock is for years we were told it's a guarantee that money is going to come. You can go ahead and put it in your forecast. And actually treasurers all across the state of Ohio banked on that. The dollars that they chose to keep us flat funded on for this school year alone was $1.7 billion across the state of Ohio. Next year was 2.1. Does anyone have any idea how much was given out in Ed Choice vouchers this year? I'll give you a hint, it's the same number. $1.7 billion that was taken out of the Fair School funding for public education was put in the line item for Ed Choice vouchers. Again, this is not about the choice of where parents choose to send schools. It's about the funding differential. I also put here, as Jeremy talked about, the shift of financial responsibility. He mentioned the DeRolf case from 1997 that ruled that the state has to provide funding to ensure that all kids have quality schools regardless of the financial outlook in the community. That was 1997. The judge that ruled on that said that the government had 38 years to fix it. I wish they wouldn't wait till 37. We have to do something. We have to address this deficit. We cannot continue to deficit spend, or else we will not maintain the quality district that we have. We have today the greatest clarity with the money coming this year and next year. Beyond that, it's the wild, wild west. But if Jeremy's trends hold true, it does not look like there's going to be an influx of money coming from the state of Ohio. Our system and our staffing models were built for 10,000 students. We're serving 8,200. I think it's important to say that that's not a one-for-one. You can't say, oh, 10,000 students, 8,200, nah, just, make that happen. Make the reductions. Everything costs more to educate kids now. Our students are coming in with more diverse needs than ever before. And so the reason why these forums are so important for us is to understand our district is not misspending money. The formula has continued to change. The game has continued to change. And our district has been trying to adjust and do all we can to address these changes without affecting the quality of our program. If we delay action and spread changes over multi-years, there's lots of different ways that districts try to attack this. I've had a lot of questions about, does this mean that we're going to put a levy on the ballot? There's not an appetite, nor does that fix our current problem. That might be a long-term solution that we're going to have to look at. But if we are to try to spread this out over multiple years, that is going to really create organizational chaos for our district. And so the longer that we push off trying to address the deficit spend, the bigger the cuts get down the line. The bigger the solution to the problem is. It's a snowball that's rolling downhill. It would cause us to ask for a larger levy down the line. It also, if we cannot figure out how to get there, there are so many different cautionary levels that based on our funding the state can put us into, that could eventually cause the state to come in and make the decisions on what happens in our school district. They actually take the power away from our local school board, appoint their own school board that makes the decisions without any care to what the community or Big Blue stands for. We don't want that. So one of the things that we're doing and why this is so important for us to be here, and we're going to open up questions here in just a few minutes, is what are our priorities? We are not at a moment where we are panicked and running to the back of the room. I don't want anyone to leave here feeling that way. But we have to address this. We have to find ways to respond. And we might have to do business a little different than we did before. However, what we can't sacrifice is the quality of our schools. We can't. If our quality goes down, if our programming goes down, if our connection with the community goes down, what happens to the number of kids that choose other opportunities? Goes up. So our priorities are that. Maintaining our high quality instruction, keeping core and extracurricular programming, supporting student well-being, retaining high-quality staff, ensuring equitable access. Oh, and by the way, making sure we're meeting growth and achievement metrics so that when the state puts out a report card, we continue to be a highly effective school district. Uh-oh. There we go. Here's where we are right now. We are really looking at everything at the moment. We're looking at the impact of this. On top of the funding formula and the property tax changes they made, they also changed the game of when our forecasts and when our analysis are due. So that's why these conversations are happening a little earlier than in years past, because we have to file our forecasts much sooner than in previous years. We have to look at our enrollment trends and how those have affected. Are there particular neighborhoods that have been affected? Are there particular levels that have been affected? What are some proactive strategies that we can put in place to try to stop students from leaving our district? How do we promote? Because I will tell you, I'll stand on this stage all day, the programming and the opportunities that kids have that attend Hamilton City Schools, they are second to none. I believe that. We've got to look at our contractual obligations. What's already negotiated? What are we required to pay moving forward? We've got to look at rising operational costs Everything goes up, just like you see in your personal life. We have to analyze what are those costs that are coming our way, and then what are capital improvement needs? What projects have to happen now? What can we defer? How can we really look at everything? We're also right now really in a research era. We are trying to look at efficiencies and cost-saving opportunities. We're looking at staffing levels. Like I said, based on enrollment. Class size matters. We're not saying we're going to all of a sudden fill classrooms to the brim, but we also have to make sure that we're being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. We need to review program effectiveness and cost per student. We're exploring shared services and regional partnerships. We would, if we have to get to a place where we have to make cuts, we want to prioritize those as far away from the classroom as possible. As far away from the classroom as possible. We also have to plan for long-term needs and community engagement. Raise your hand if you work for the school district. Raise your hand if you're a community member. How can we ensure that this is not the only place this conversation is happening? We are a community of 60,000. Whether you have kids in school, and whether your kids have gone through school, choose a private school option, your community thrives when you have a good public school system. We need good public schools in this community for any and all kids. We also want to be transparent. You're going to see in the next few weeks, many districts are having these conversations. There will actually be a joint letter that comes out tomorrow from all Butler County superintendents and treasurers, sounding the alarm on many of these same things that we talked with you tonight. We've got to get our community to understand what's going on. What are the challenges that we're facing? Because we're going to have to make some decisions moving forward of how do we balance our budget? How do we find ways to reduce our overall spending but keep our quality high? Period. End of story. We want to make sure that we are being responsible. We want to engage everybody in decision making, and then we want to build a sustainable roadmap. I said to Mr. Frazier, as well as some of our other senior leaders in the district, I don't want to be back here in a year having the same conversation again. We as a district have to find ways to get out of this. We have to find ways to have a more solid footing so that our district isn't constantly looking at that red number and worrying what's coming next. So here's kind of our timeline on decision making. In October, Jeremy rolled out his forecast. We're here now. I should have put a big "you are here" arrow there. We're rolling out the forecast to key groups. We're going to ask you for feedback, and then also deep research on cuts and return on investments. What's working? What's not? We've got to talk to people to find out what those things are. In December, our board will get all of that research back, all of those pieces, and they're going to help guide, because at the end of the day, our school board is our fiscal stewards. They will help make the determination of what our plan is forward. They're going to help determine what is the correct approach. What type of reduction in spending do we need to look at? We would do that in December. Then in January, once Jeremy and I have that kind of directive from the board, we would come up with a comprehensive plan to address that. We would then bring that back to the board as a proposal for them to then approve, and we would start rolling that out. While there's a lot of uncertainty in this, I don't want the timing or people feeling like this is something looming for 6 months over our head. We want to be on top of this. We want to make sure we have a plan that we clearly communicate to our staff and to our community, and is also responsive of what the needs are. Not just what we think, but what you think, what the data tells us, what the results show us, so that we can be the best district we can each and every day for every kid in this system. I just talked to you all, and I felt like some of the air went out of the room. While these numbers seem big, while a $9 million, you might go, oh my goodness, what does that mean? It's about 8% of our overall spending. We will get through this. We will not have to dismantle our district. We will not have to stop all of the amazing programs and opportunities we have for students and staff in the community, because that's what makes us Big Blue. But we do have to put our heads together. We do have to figure out where are little tiny things we can do to adjust and change to operate under this new reality. I want the community to understand this has caught us off guard because of the changes that happened in the budget. We knew 26 was going to be a year where we had some deficit spending, not the type of deficit spending that you're seeing on those charts. Tell your story. Tell what public schools do for your family. I've told this story not to everyone in this room, but I am standing right here as proof that public schools changes people's lives. I would not be here. I'm a first-generation college student if there weren't teachers in public schools who said, you can be whatever you want to be, and come in this classroom and let's learn literacy and math and all of these different subjects. And you know, hey, what? I'll help you fill out your college application in your FAFSA form. They did that. My family wasn't sure how to navigate all that. My family supported me, which is important. We have to get the community and the schools on the same side. I think COVID caused us to close down our doors. I do think there's a breakdown in trust and communication at times between some of our families and our schools. It's not intentional. We are here. We get up every single day. I say this all the time. I do not believe one person that works in Hamilton City Schools wakes up and says, I'm going to be really bad at what I do today. That's just not reality. None of us do that. We should try to put good out in the world. And I think we've got to band together. We have to do that because it is happening right before our eyes. This voucher continues to expand. So I would love to connect, and I can help give you some resources, but we will push those out on a larger scale. I do want to acknowledge we have 2 of our current school board members that are sitting here, a former school board member that's sitting here in the front row, and both of our new board members that joined the board in January. They believe in this district. They believe in serving this community, and they want it to be the best. And so I think it's going to take more than us having those conversations, helping to connect with the community and tell our story. Talk about the impact that the show choir program has had on your son. Talk about how athletics opened a door. There's a really cool piece that Mr. Neary, who teaches here at the high school, put out about what kids want to be when they grow up. And to hear these stories, and they are as diverse as the kids that we serve. Everything from college and being a professional athlete to serving in our armed forces. That's what's amazing about our school system. We are not a one-size-fits-all school system. Our goal in Hamilton City Schools is to make the system fit the kid and not the other way around. And that's what we're working towards. But we need dollars and resources to be able to do that. One thing, and this is really important to us, if you'll take back out your phone, this is a kind of follow-up survey. There is no information to ask who you are, where you work, what you do for life. But I want your thoughts. I want to know what things are most important to you in this district that we need to look at. I want to know what things can we look at doing differently, not getting rid of, but what can we do different? And so if you can take some time and answer this survey, we would greatly appreciate it. I already last night started reviewing the ones from our sessions yesterday. Our team is meeting next week. We want to make sure that your voice is heard as we are figuring out this challenge together. We will figure it out, and we'll do it together, but it takes everyone sitting down, sharing thoughts, understanding where we are and where we have to go. Any of our current board, anything, or?
My name is Lauren Sprague. I am a school board member for 5 more weeks. I wasn't gray before I started, no. But it's been a pleasure to serve. But first of all, I want to say thank you. If you're a teacher here, thank you for all your hard work. It is appreciated. Board members, we appreciate what you're doing in the rooms, and we don't always say that, but we do. We know it's a tough job. I know it's a tough job because I came through Hamilton Schools as a teacher and an administrator. And if you're a community member, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here to hear what's being spoken. This has been laid in our laps. It's not a happy time as a board member. And I do appreciate that we have Carrie Mancuso and Ashley Hopkins over there who are newly elected for school board. They'll be coming in on January. And as soon as we found out what we're facing, they have been involved with that process. So it's not just, we're all leaving school board, we're just saying, no, forget it. They're coming on, we're helping them, we'll be back and helping in whatever capacity we can. But the school board's concerned, as we should be. But we are very happy about this district. We are very happy with Mrs. Blevins, who has taken this stance of getting out in front of it and not just waiting around until the very last minute to say, hey, by the way, we've got this little $5 million problem or $10 million problem in 2 years. We're looking at that now and how we can take care of the situation. And we want to do that by making sure that what happens in the classroom is paramount to our success. And that's what's always been happening, is what's happening in the classroom. So we do appreciate all that. But I've sat in your seats. I've been through other school districts and here when we've looked at budget issues, and it's scary. It really is. I totally understand that. But we will, as Mrs. Blevins said, we will make it through together. We'll be stronger for it, and we'll just do the best we can. But if you're thinking about contacting the state, please do. Because, we always talk about, I don't think you said it in this one, we always talk about those are state dollars. Those aren't state dollars. Those are your dollars. Those are your dollars that are going out, that you're putting in, that's going out to private education. And we agree, I don't have anything against private education, but I do have a problem with accountability. I have a problem with the taking from public schools, especially $1.7 billion is going out, and it's going to places. If they were held to the same, I'm getting on soapbox now, but if I can, if they were on the same plane as we were, with all the same expectations, and you're going to have to take care of every kid that walks to your door, you're going to take care of your more students requiring more discipline or require more services, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with picking and choosing and then not having any accountability for how your money is spent or what happens in the classroom. I would love to see a state report card for private schools. I would love it, okay? But I think if you're in public education, we're all going, amen, brother. But anyway, but thank you very much for being here, and we will make it through. We have some good ideas, but we're always looking for more. And I wanted to say thank you for Mrs. Blevins and for Jeremy, Mr. Frazier up there, Jeremy, for thinking outside the box of how can we rectify this situation. I don't think you said it, but in this one, but yesterday we decided to stop mailing out report cards, and how much is it saving us?
About $100,000.
$100,000 here and that's Steve Isgrove money, but anyway, I had to, Steve. But even turning off the lights, those little things, we all know that if you're in a budget, those little things add up. And the sooner we can make those happen, the less effect it will have, more of effect it will have later on. But thank you very much.
The last thing I'll kind of leave you with is we can do this. I really hope that you're leaving here understanding we are all in this together. I put this up here, we need great schools. I could add a word that said we need great public schools. We absolutely need great public schools. And why? Yeah, for our team, for our community, but at the end of the day, for our kids. Our kids deserve it. And when we are going to look at what we have to do, that has to be our focus. From the bottom up in our priority. Our kids have to come first. And so you made an important step for being here tonight. Just so you know, we are filming this. Thank you to TV Hamilton and Steve for being here to tape this. This will go out, but I'm asking, please go back and talk to someone about this. Encourage them to watch it. Encourage them to fill out the survey. Tomorrow, to all of our staff, as part of our Inside the H newsletter that will go out this month, the links will be in there for both the presentation, the recording, and the survey. We need to hear from you. Help us know where and what we need to look at. And we will do this together. We absolutely will. So thank you for being here. I'm sorry my jokes weren't better, and I hope you have a wonderful evening and a happy Thanksgiving.